Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is my second proper video, and I'm stoked to say that I already have some viewer questions. So it just felt natural to drop a Q&A video into the feed and answer some of your questions about the fashion design industry. All right, we're going to start with some relatively easy ones first, and then work up to the big one. So question number one, do people still dress according to the season that looks best on them? Do manufacturers take that into consideration when choosing product colors? So first part of that question, there is kind of this cottage industry that has popped up of people doing like color profiles based on your face and your complexion and how colors kind of bounce off of you. You can actually find a lot of these videos on one of my absolute favorite YouTubers, ASMR Twix, who I'll link down in the description below. She does a lot kind of in the Tokyo spa scene. But I don't think it's still super common for people to buy clothing based on their seasonality, complexion, or to even really know what their season is. Now, maybe more so in the makeup and cosmetics world, but I would still consider this kind of a luxury service that your typical consumer's not really gonna know about. And no, fashion designers don't really take this into consideration when we're picking colors, but we do look at color selling season over season. So we pretty much know, like, yeah, that's a really hard green for most people to wear. So either let's not offer that shade of green, or let's only make a really small quantity of it. And of course we do follow color trend. So if we are in a brighter blue cycle, for example, then we'll offer that brighter blue. So I hope that answers your question. That one actually came from my dear sibling, Brandy, over at Garb Theater. Check out her channel too. I'll link her also in the description below. Okay, question number two. What would surprise people the most if they could see behind the scenes at a typical fashion designer's job? The first thing that comes to mind for me is that we are messy. A designer's desk is usually covered with a mix of garment samples, fabric headers that we're still kind of going through, thread color books, zipper color books, Pantone swatches, trims and lab dips in various states of approval, because design takes a lot of physical things. And the joke that clutter equals work is actually true. Okay, question number three. What's one pro tip you could give to someone who is new to sewing? The biggest tip, I think, would be to never underestimate the power of a muslin. So a muslin is the first garment you sew, usually with a cheaper fabric. It's actually, the term comes after the fabric muslin, which is a looser plain weave, usually in cotton, and it's known for being inexpensive. So your first muslin garment is usually sewn out of that inexpensive fabric, so you can figure out exactly how you're going to construct things, make sure it's coming together the way you thought it would, and start to build that muscle memory for how to put the thing together. This is also a great garment to use to fit, so fit it on yourself or fit it on a mannequin or a dress form, and see if everything is kind of working and draping the way you expect it to for the end user, yourself, or dress form, or whatever. The biggest thing that I usually underestimate when I make a maxi dress, for example, is I almost always end up adding length after the first fitting, once I fit that muslin on a human, because it just moves a little bit differently, and sometimes you need a little bit of extra length. So do yourself a favor and have the patience to practice. Okay, question number four. This is the big one, so it's going to take a little bit more to answer this. How do you buy clothing ethically? Oh, my dog, you guys, this is possibly the most complicated question about the fashion industry. This one came from a very good friend of mine who might just revel just a little bit in watching me struggle to answer this one. So shout out to Mr. Combo. You know who you are. But seriously, this is a tough one. How do you make sure you're buying clothing ethically? And spoiler alert, there is no one magical unicorn garment that you can say 100% unequivocally is ethically made. And that comes down to priorities. The first question you have to ask yourself is, what does ethically actually mean to you, the consumer? Ethics are part of a value judgment, and they're subjective for each of us, right? The second question is, what part of the process do you care about the most? Is it sustainable materials, low impact manufacturing, reducing waste, overall carbon footprint, responsible business practices, human rights? And that is by no means a complete list. Overwhelmed yet? So is the apparel industry, because there is no overarching strategy for all of this. And what's worse, messaging any of these claims, especially in the United States, is so notoriously fraught with legal concerns that many brands, even if they're trying to do the right thing, can't really talk about it without getting in trouble. That's because regulation moves slowly, especially in the apparel industry. Now, the FTC has essentially clamped down on anything that could be considered greenwashing, for example, but without providing really clear guidelines to what you can say. And let's be fair, new fibers, manufacturing processes, and terms are invented every day, so that is a lot for any governing body to keep up with. Now, a ray of hope, because the FTC is currently working on updating their green guides. In January of 2023, this year, they are reaching out for kind of consumer feedback to kind of help provide a more updated guide to manufacturers. So this may help address a lot of those messaging concerns. So there's hope for that. So I've been behind the scenes in these conversations at a brand level, and fortunate enough to attend events like AAPN and AAFA summits on sustainability and traceability in our industry. So let me give my unofficial, unaffiliated, purely subjective opinion on the matter. Okay, let's diagram this. First, let's start with the garment itself. What is the stuff of the garment? What is it made of? So take me, for example. I am an animal-loving vegan, so I have certain materials I avoid, like animal skins. Maybe to me, my value trade-off is that I'll buy synthetic fibers, so nylon, polyester, PU, vegan leather, instead. But I know that buying plastics can contribute to microplastic shed in the water supply. Maybe I know that certain fibers create more pollutants during production. Am I, as a consumer, willing to trade off that to satisfy my priority of animal welfare? And then what about the animals swimming around with microplastics in their GI tracts? What about the humans walking around with plastics in their GI tracts? Again, value trade-off, because probably no two people you encounter are going to have the exact same priorities as you. Okay, what about cotton? So I am a self-proclaimed cotton geek. It is my favorite fiber. Yes, I know that's the lamest sentence ever uttered. And not just because I'm from Texas and that's where they grow it. How about color-grown cotton instead of dyeing cotton? Cool, comes in 4 colors: brown, light brown, greenish, and natural. What about organic cotton as opposed to conventional or even bioengineered cotton? Okay, so I was on board the organic cotton train for years until I read an article about how much water it takes to grow organic cotton, much more than kind of your traditional or bioengineered cotton. So, pesticides in the ground aside, there is still a resource trade-off. So who decides if we can trade off that water, natural resource, for organic cotton? Okay, moving on. Let's talk about waste. So waste is a major concern for obvious reasons. We only have so much viable space on the planet, and there is many a horror story about what that wastage does to our natural resources. So let me give you an example. A maker of a product started a groundbreaking take-back program, meaning you buy their garment, you wear it, and then when it's worn out, you ship it back to them via a prepaid shipping envelope. Then one of two things happens. A, they break down their product into its core raw materials and recycle them into new baby products. Or B, they repair the garment, clean it, and list it for resale on their website. That's awesome, right? Seriously, it is awesome, and it's a painstaking amount of work on their part. So what's the problem? Why can't we do this with all of our apparel? Well, the industry is slowly making progress towards circularity, but there are a lot of roadblocks. Carbon impact of shipping the thing back, manpower and energy consumption to separate the thing into its raw materials and/or refurbish it. And finally, what do you do as a brand if someone sends a competitor product back to you? Maybe you know what materials went into that garment and you can recycle it, but maybe you don't. Maybe it ends up as waste anyway. For the maker in this example, they decided that waste reduction was their core ethos, and so the other concerns were known trade-offs for them. Take back is hard when we're talking about circular fashion and what happens to clothing at the end of its life. Who takes it back? Can we really expect the average consumer to clean out their closet, know which of those brands have a take-back program, and research how to get that thing back to them? And then there's the issue with the mystery of what's in the take-back garments. The label may say 60% cotton, 40% polyester, but are those fibers twisted together? Is the cotton woven one direction and the poly's woven the other direction? And then how do you mechanically or chemically separate those two raw materials? And what about dye stuffs? Without a recycling facility knowing what dye stuff was used, they have to assume it was the most caustic option that could possibly have been used and process it as such, right? Because you have to kind of assume the worst case scenario if you don't know what's in the thing. Now, there is a push toward digital labeling just to solve some of these problems. So that means a QR code permanently affixed to a garment that would tell a recycling facility at the end of that garment's life what's in it, what dye stuff and chemicals were used, how are the fibers, woven together, and how to break that garment down. But that is still in the future. So next, let's look at secondhand clothing. So this is an issue near and dear to my heart, as it is with many millennials and Zoomers. Understandably, the youngest generation with purchasing power, the Zoomers, is fed up with greenwashing. They've been hearing it their entire lives, they don't believe it, they don't trust it. So many of them are eschewing new apparel altogether and only buying secondhand or vintage. This is actually a more simple option if you are into the thrill of the chase and hunting for that perfect piece. And as a consumer, we still get to change up our look, right? We still get to have new things, new to us, in our closets. The resources have been spent already making that garment, so you are reusing it and therefore extending the life of a product, right? So you're basically stretching out that cost-benefit ratio. Even better if you repair the garment to wear again, or you donate the clothing when you're done with it so that it can find its new owner. Now, this doesn't completely solve the issue of waste, but it does keep that thing out of the landfill for a lot longer. The other version of this is to buy less, buy better, and wear longer. So look for those really high quality items, maybe even from a brand that has a repair service like Patagonia, and just wear that thing for as long as you possibly can. Okay, now on to the humanitarian part of the question. So some of the ways that our industry ensures that human rights are being respected are third-party audits, meaning the brand pays a reputable third-party company to go into the factory, wherever it is, and do a compliance audit. So are there enough fire escapes? Are there good enough employee records to ensure that, no one underage is working there? Is there proper ventilation? Is there enough space between machines? The list is very long. And then we, the brand, visit the factory. So someone from our company goes and meets face-to-face with the factory owner. They walk the factory floor, they discuss any points that maybe they failed in their third-party audit and how they're correcting for that. A lot can be accomplished by just showing up at the factory you're using. And unfortunately, this is becoming a more and more rare practice. Now, the blind spots are many. So using an agent, or basically a representative for the factory, adds another layer between you, the brand, and the factory itself, and can further disconnect you from what's really happening at that factory facility. So think of it like a game of telephone with an extra person at it. The transparency just naturally goes down. Working with a factory that contracts out certain operations, like dyeing, to a vendor you don't know. If you don't know that there's another facility being used, probably under another name, then how are you going to know that that facility is compliant? Trims or specialty items that the factory sources from a non-compliant trim supplier. And of course, the biggest blind spot is to you, the consumer. You will never see this level of detail from a brand, though some claim they are trying to be transparent. But keep in mind, any kind of factory profile or manufacturing profile that you see is just a snapshot in time. The vendor base changes all the time because fashion is fickle. A good example would be when those light knit shoes hit the market a few years ago, right? At first they were very expensive because there weren't a lot of factories that had that really specialized knitting equipment. So a lot of brands had to find a new factory and onboard a new vendor who did have the capabilities to make that. Fashion is what's in demand, and it is always changing. So ensuring that things are made responsibly is basically massive project after massive project because you are perpetually starting over. So now to try and answer Mr. Combo's original question, how do you buy clothing ethically? Well, there are several things you can do. Number one, first and foremost, you need to decide what is most important to you, the consumer. What are your ethical priorities? Number two, you can research a brand, see all there is to see about them in the news world, but know that you will never have visibility to the entire picture. Number three, you can buy secondhand or vintage. Number four, you can buy from a company that offers repairs like a Patagonia, or repair those items yourself. Number five, you can support a female LGBTQ+ or minority-owned business. Number six, you can buy made in the USA. Number seven, you can buy big brands, but look for those certifiable third-party trademarks, right? Like Reprieve, Ecovera, Blue Sign, Better Cotton Initiative, or BCI, stuff like that. Or eight, you can shop brands that do a lot of community give back. So this can be domestically or overseas. These are just a few of the ways you can be a more responsible shopper. And be optimistic because everybody's trying to solve for this and make progress in this area, especially the sustainability part of it. So I'm hopeful for what the next few years bring, especially as more millennials and Gen Z become the decision makers in fashion design, in manufacturing, lobbying, and regulation. Thank you so much for taking this very deep dive with me, and keep dropping your questions into the comments below so I can answer them in a future video. This one was a tough one, but it was really fun to break down with you guys. So please like and subscribe, and if you'd like a completely different perspective on fashion and apparel, please check out my sister's channel over at Garb Theater. I'll link that below in the show description too. And that's all for now. Bye guys!